Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better, so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Sargeant, National Manager, Retail and Broker at Bank of Sydney, to unpack why one of the most uncool savings tools, the humble term deposit, is quietly making a comeback. With the Reserve Bank of Australia back in the spotlight after recent rate movements, many Australians are wondering what it actually means for their money. Michelle shares why now might be the time to shop around how term deposits can help accelerate savings goals, especially for those nearing retirement or even in retirement, and clears up some of the common misconceptions that hold people back from using them. Well, welcome, Michelle, to our show.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here.
Interesting, we've had, in the last couple of months, we've now had two rating rises. We've actually seen with the war in Iran, the petrol prices going up. So it really is an unusual economic climate that we're finding ourselves in, but especially with the rate rises. Well, the humble term deposits made a bit of a comeback. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And
Right.
so let's just break it down to start simple. Term deposits have been around forever. Why are we suddenly talking about them again?
Well, it's great that you talk about the environment and the impact on the financial environment, that what is happening to us now, and that's really the appeal of term deposits. The rate rises, some of the issues we've seen overseas. When you see an environment of rate rises, you then see term deposits sneaking out, and you start seeing some fabulous rates coming through term deposits. So, we talk about term deposits. They've been around forever, and it's just about helping us. And if I can use the word, it's not a very exciting product. There's nothing that's illuminating about it. But when you talk about just what needs that customers may have for their funds, it does provide stability.
And just for a lot of people, I mean, even going back when I first started, people had check accounts
Mm.
that basically paid no interest. But we find a lot of people, even in self-managed super funds, have just money sitting in cash, not really doing anything. And if you know that you've got a 3-month period, a 6-month period, or a year, you can lock it in and get really good rates.
Yeah, you can. And that's the thing. It gives that flexibility and a time frame that suits the needs of the client. And it regardless of, the customer type, whether it is a trust or a superannuation fund, or, mums and dads at home that's got some funds to put aside. If you know you've got a, a strong budget and a time frame that you can actually allow the funds to be invested for, term deposits are a solid option.
And as we've just had another rate rise,
Mm.
people really should people typically just don't bother, and it's only really if you've got a mortgage, you actually say, oh no, that's going to be more pain. But on the flip side, if you've got cash or you want some security, especially with the war happening and the problems we're seeing in the world and the world landscape, it's just people want security, don't they?
They do, they do. And it's really, really important that people look at those the term deposit as that top of that form of security for their funds. So when we talk about the things that are happening around the world, the RBA looking at wanting to manage the inflation and things like that, term deposit pricing and the terms provide that type of stability for those clients that have funds set aside to be able to do that. And you know, we have a lot of clients. We have about 75 to 80% of our clients are actually our term deposit customers, and they keep coming back for that security. They keep coming back for that stability. And we have terms up to 12 months. And it's again depending on what their needs are. We can certainly provide the support for them to be able to do that.
And, you know, Bank of Sydney is offering very competitive rates, but
Yeah.
people should shop around, shouldn't they?
No.
So oh, come on, Michelle. No, but it's
Oh,
just
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, people should shop around and get the best price. But at Bank of Sydney, we will do our utmost standards to make sure that we love our customers. We want them to stay with us, and so we'll work very hard to ensure that we can retain our customers. But we also then want to invite new customers that come to us. We want new customers to come and share that, and get those same privileges that our customers already get, and us wanting to retain their business and help them and their families grow and things like that. So, yes, please, you can shop around, but come talk to Bank of Sydney, and we'll be as competitive as we possibly can.
And I think that's the point. Most people have the four big banks, and
They
and
do.
people we knew who have always said, "Well, I'm with one of those four big banks, and so I'm only ever going to have my term deposit with them." No, you should
No,
really shop around, and I do think banks like yourself, which aren't the size that are far more nimble, can be far more flexible, and really competitive with their rates. So it's important people
absolutely.
look at that.
And look, like a major bank, we also have government guarantee. So, that's
Important.
really, really important. And so, when people you talk about security and stability of funds, Bank of Sydney is a very secure and a bank that's there for all customers. So, don't just see us as a small bank. See us as, while we are not a major bank, we will certainly do our best to serve you. And look, while we are not a major bank, we want to grow. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
we're going to continue looking after our customers, and we're going to continue looking after our new customers that come along.
And I
So,
do think that's where banks like yourself, yes, you are growing, but you're growing because you're providing service, you're building relationships, which a lot of, unfortunately, the big banks sometimes have lost that. Uh, it'd be good to actually have a real case example, because I still think people may be listening saying, "Oh, term deposits, a bit boring," but they
yeah,
really can help accelerate your savings. What's a
yeah.
possible, a real life example that you might be able to help us with?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you've got a savings account that's, you might even only be earning 0.4, 0.5% on it. I had a client, I was just in Maroubra this morning, and a gentleman came in. We are helping him out with his internet banking because he's a new client. And he came to us just for a savings facility because he's looking to go on a holiday. And, we asked those questions about how long and when you're going for, and, how much do you need to actually save for your holiday?
Yeah.
And he already had about 10,000 put aside. And I said, look, if you know you're not going for another 6 months, why don't we look at a term deposit for 3 or 5 or 6 months? We could look at a rate over 4% at the moment. So, you're looking at difference of what you might earn on a 0.5% or at another bank or from our Boss Saver, which is slightly lower, and earn a little bit more interest through a term deposit, and it's there. And it's there when it comes time to paying for your traveling costs. It's there and it's going to be available for you to when you want to pay. So, you're talking about some difference in funds, and why not? Why not you earn that? And there might be a little bit more spending money for when you go on a holiday. So,
Yeah.
and he did have accounts elsewhere. And so, we're very hopeful to see what we can do to help him with that. So,
And just really on that exact practical example,
mm,
nearly over 6 months, just doing the very quick maths, that's another three, four
yes,
hundred dollars difference between
correct.
where it was to what is, well, that pays his travel insurance, that pays for, and it's just all because you've just been a bit smarter with your money. And it really is, we're just trying to hold the whole education side of around money. And I love talking about property and shares long term, but you also need to think smart when it comes to short term and doing things like that. And that's $300 or $400. You'd rather have that in your pocket than not having that in your pocket.
Correct.
Okay, so probably you're talking to people every day about this. So what are some of the misconceptions people find with term deposits?
Look at let's go back to you talk about education,
Hmm.
and let's go back to that. They're not really whiz bang. They're not a very excitable product. I think in a society that we're in, we've got lots of things that we're doing that are busy and a little bit more excitable. Here's a product that in our environment is paying a higher rate of return on funds, a very good rate of return on funds. It's secure, it's stable, it's there, right? Set, forget, if that makes sense for a period of time. In a rising rate environment, term deposits, they are more competitive. And so, people need to really, if they've got some excess, if they've got funds and they've got funds sitting in just as basic savings account, they're sort of they're stepping away from giving themselves, like you said before, about earning those extra funds, and you don't have to do anything with them. So I'm actually quite pleased that they're boring or they're restrictive, because what they actually do is they provide a guarantee. And while we're so busy with everything else, we've got some guarantee, we've got some funds coming to us at a higher rate in a short period of time, or what the period of time is that they've chosen. So, and you're right with what that gentleman I was talking to you about who's traveling, like he knows he's going to have that money there for him, and he knows he's going to have a little bit more for when he goes traveling.
And I think that's what people have to realize, that if you're investing in the share market, and I get when you're talking, saying this is sometimes a bit boring or uncruel, and there's, oh, cryptocurrency, but there's just no safety unless you can think really long term, and it's
Mhm.
money you can afford to lose. Where it's the opposite. This is money that is going to be there. It's got the government guarantee, and I just think with the way the world is at the moment, people are buying gold in record numbers at the moment. Well, there's no guarantee gold prices will actually go up. You may have the security that's there, but at least you've got the security and interest coming to you with term deposits. So I do think, yeah, it really is a worthwhile part of any money or financial strategy, is to have term deposits, should be a part of it.
There's some market just, on the savings, that sometimes just to get that higher bit of interest rate on a savings account, you've got to do these extra things. You've got to pay an extra amount of money per month to qualify for this rate, or you've got to do less number of transactions to qualify for this rate. So that's where there's some complexities, right? Whereas your humble term deposit, you have a term, you choose a term that best suits you. And then we provide you a very competitive interest rate for that period. It's set and forget. Now, you can access it, right? So if there is an emergency that comes up, you can actually access a term deposit. But we want to try and discourage that if we can, because you've tried to fix it for a period to earn those sort of funds, but there are tend to be some costs that come with it. So we just want to be sure, choose the right term that suits your needs. Let us look after you for that. We'll give you the best rate we possibly can. Set and forget.
And you've made a really good point there regarding those bonus savings accounts. And there's a
Mm.
lot of advertising. There's one with a lion at the moment that does a lot of advertising on the TV. I won't name names, but yeah, they all do say, look at the great interest rates we're getting off that, and it stays accessible. But exactly right. If you don't do tick this box, tick that box, make them so many contributions, or how many withdrawals and all these sort of things. Yes, to qualify for that interest rate. Here, it's very simple, nice, set and forget. And I think people forget life gets busy.
Yes.
Life gets busy. We've all got things, or better things to do with our time, and having things that are nice, set and forget, that we feel like, they're safe, secure, they've got the government guarantee. Gee, there's a big comfort factor in that alone.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And if people are too busy to pop into our branches, then we can they can open their accounts online. So we talk about the humbleness of the term deposit, but there's still that digital component that we can support customers with. So if you're too busy to come into a branch, you can actually get the term deposits online.
And moving to, say, retirees. I
Yes.
talk to a lot of retirees, um, and one of the two questions they always ask is, how long will my money last? That's the number one. And I get that,
Mm.
because we're all living longer and we want our money to make sure lives as long as lasts as long as we do. But the second thing is, I want security in knowing that, my next 12 months or next 2 years income is secure. I get the long-term planning and all this sort of thing, and having good long-term growth assets, but I want to make sure my next 2 years is secure. Well, term deposits are perfect for that, aren't they?
They absolutely. And look, you've even got, the solutions within some of the term deposits to look at a monthly interest payment. So, if you're talking about a predictable income, term deposits is certainly one that can support that. And the guarantee we've talked about, the stability of a locked in option with a guaranteed rate. And it's all about protecting that portion of that capital, from any sort of volatility in the market. Um, you know, when we talk to some of our clients, they are and because they've been with us for so long, they want to make sure that they can get the best rate possible. And we want to support that where we can. So we have a
Mm.
very high retention rate. And so, that constant renewal, if that's the right environment for what you want. We have those functionalities that are available for all our term deposit accounts. But, you tend to look at some short term expenses. If we are looking at some terms, and again, we talked about the client from this morning, some of the 1 to 3 year terms are very good for that type of client that wants to lock it away for that a little bit longer, with some monthly payments to them from an interest payment point of view. So, it sort of looks like they're getting a regular monthly pay. And that's certainly how the term deposits can support that. But, it's a multiple strategy for a client that wants to have stability in their income. So, take a short term because you want to do some travel, invest some funds in a longer term deposit term for some regular interest being paid.
I have learned something that I really did not know. I have to admit, I did not know you could get a term deposit that could pay you the monthly interest.
Yeah, so any of the terms generally from 12 months or longer, you
What?
can get a monthly paid interest. It is something that's a solution for our clients who are looking that in the retirement space that need to draw a monthly income. So
And it's not touching the original capital.
no, that's right.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. No, that's a really good because people just when they go from and it'd be good to talk about the practical side of term deposits, but from a practical side of retiring, they go from that monthly salary while they're
Mm,
working, and they just sort of want to keep things nice and simple. So if they can replace that salary with a monthly payment from their term deposit, well, perfect. Yep, and still have that security. So so there's a practical side of it. What's other things like people need to roll over? Is it a complicated process if you've done it for
no.
3 months and you wanna roll it over for another 3 months? How does that
No,
work?
so it's just we love talking to our customers, Mark. So my team, we have a number of forms of communication. So we always let customers know of their renewal notices. We send them emails. We can send them SMSs to let them know how they're tracking with their term deposits. Even on the internet banking, they can see their term deposits and when it's up for maturity. And they can actually manage their renewals through their online banking facility if they wanted to actually roll it for another term and things like that. So, but again, it depends on the circumstances. If another client that I was talking to yesterday had a 3 month term deposit, but he said to me, he goes, Michelle, I don't need to do anything. So what can I do? And I said, well, here's your options. You can go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. Let's look at some different terms. And he actually then rolled it for another 9 months,
Yeah.
because he's got some kids. His kids were coming back from the UK. So that's just short on 9 months. That's a little bit longer than 9 months that they were coming. But, for him, he had that plan and could actually be prepared for that. So, it's a very simple process. And they can ring our customer call center and renew it, or they can, like I said, do it through their online banking, or if we love them coming to see us at the branches, and the staff would
That
pounce on
is
them if they
so
have a chat with them,
unbank-like,
so
Michelle, so
I
that's great to hear that.
know.
Yes. Okay, so
Absolutely.
for people, as I said, a lot of the people listening are in their 50s, 60s, but they've got adult children who are either saving
Mm,
for their first property, and I get a lot of questions. Oh, I need to try and get my deposit grow as fast as possible. So maybe I should put it on the share market. And I said, well, you don't know the share market unless you've got 7 to 10 years, because you just don't know when the downturn may happen. It will happen, but you don't know when. Short term, it has to be uh, term deposits and things like that, so that you've got the security because you don't want to mess around with your deposit for a home.
no, absolutely, and look, we love talking to, potential first home buyers, because not only will we help them with their deposit funds, and the interest that they earn on their deposit funds with us, we also want to talk to them about their home loan needs. So, we've got a wonderful team of relationship managers that can help customers that are looking for their first home, second home, investment loan. We even do business lending. So, for us, we talk about we're not a major bank, but we do offer the support for all customers, for all their banking needs. And as a bank, we are wanting to grow. And so, we will look at new products in the future, to looking to help then, support our customers that, primarily may just have a transaction account and term deposit with us and a home loan with us. We may look to better help them out with other products in the future. So,
Okay.
it's very exciting, very exciting.
Yeah, and so, someone who's been listening to this podcast says, okay, I hadn't really considered a term deposit, but with the interest rate rises and a bit of security, and I want some short-term security.
Mm.
What are some of the things that they maybe should need to look at before they come and actually speak to the bank?
Yeah, have a look at, what their needs are. So understand specifically what they need the funds. Do they need the funds in a short period of time or a long period of time? And are they looking to, and then they come and have a chat. Let's have a chat about, what our solutions can be for them. And then let's have a look at what the best rate is we can actually offer to them. We will engage in having a conversation with them about their transactional or internet
Mhm.
banking needs, because that's really important that they keep close to their funds. And internet banking certainly helps with that, to be able to
And
do that.
actually,
So
how long, if you walk into a branch, say, yep, I've got 10,000 like that person did this morning,
yeah.
how long does it actually take you to, from a practical sense of view, to
But,
actually sign up for a term deposit?
well, that particular client, he brand new customer. So, give us, maybe 30 minutes of your time, if you want to come and have a chat with us. Because not only did we do we actually help the term deposit, we also, looked at a transactional account. We also did the internet banking registration. That's quite immediate. And then we wanted to make sure that we had the Visa debit card set up correctly for their transactional needs as well. So it's not just about the term deposit, Mark. It's about their full banking needs, and we want to be there to support that. But it was 30 minutes. It was fantastic.
Pretty good. Okay, yeah.
And sometimes they can take a little bit longer, but it all depends on the customer. We've got the time to talk to you. We love a conversation. And I actually, the manager at the branch actually was kind enough to make us a cup of coffee and give us a piece of cake. So,
Oh, wow. Okay. I don't remember the last time that's happened. Uh, okay. So anything else we've pretty well covered most, the security, for all ages, especially retirees. Anything else that you would want to, that we've missed that you thought we haven't covered on that people should know about term deposits?
really take the time to understand what you need,
Yeah.
and make sure that it may not just be the best rate that you need to change to actually find for your deposit. It needs to be what is the term that best suits your needs. Yes, it's a little, humble term deposit. It's not exciting. It's not whiz bang, but gee, the stability and and the returns that you can earn from the term deposits is really, really important. And have a look at your options. It might need to be, a transaction, a savings account, and a term deposit. I just would love people to know that we can help them with that, with their full banking needs at Bank of Sydney. Please come talk to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Excellent. No, and I think one of the things, The Richest Man in Babylon was one of the very first books I was ever given, and I still think it takes you probably about an hour to read it. But one of the things
Oh, wow.
it talks about was tithing. Put 10% away, just put for that, whether it's
Mm.
for your future deposit, whether it's for future investing, but always put 10% of your salary away. It's one of the key learnings of that book. Uh, but one of the things I just added to it is you shouldn't just put it into a cash account and get zero interest if it's long term. Things like term deposits eventually you have enough so that you can invest in shares, or as I said before about a deposit. But uh, it's getting your money working harder for you in
Yeah.
any situation. So no, thank you, Michelle. It's been really, really lovely to
You
chat
know,
to you.
you too.
One question I always ask our guest is, what's the very best piece of advice you've ever received, whether it's financial or family or
Mm.
whatever?
So you talk about 10%. I'm one of the best pieces of advice that I received from a very good friend of mine. She, was actually, a chief technical officer for a company I used to work for, and she's a very smart lady. And she said to me, Michelle, if you are not putting a third of your salary away to savings, then what are you doing with your money? And so I've been doing that for a very long time now. And it just requires a bit of discipline, Mark. And it's amazing what, you know, I've been doing that for nearly 20 years now. And so I've been very fortunate in making sure I adopt that with all my, with whatever role that I've had, to then I can go and buy a property. I've got an investment properties and things like that. So for me, and then part of what's the other 33% obviously goes towards your household bills and your expenses. And then what's left over, what can you give to someone that needs it more than you? So it's you talk about term deposits being a humbling product. Just trying to do something for someone else in the community that needs it a little bit more than me just helps bring things into a bit of reality to help people out. So that's sort of the advice that I got from her, and I've been trying my hand on heart to do that since for the last 20 years, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do.
And I think the 2 points there that, brilliant. It's brilliant piece of advice. And I know for a lot of people, a third of their
Yes,
salary to save is tough, but
it's
people should
tough.
put some away. But I do think that's a point that's not often, not said enough, is that, giving back, whether it's financially or with just your own physically, is such an important thing. We're put on there, and a lot of us are in very lucky situations. So giving back is very important. So no, Michelle, it's really been lovely to have you on the show, and
Thanks, Mark.
thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. You too. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed this, and if you'd like to learn more about Michelle and Bank of Sydney, you can visit their website at www.banksyd.com.au, or feel free to reach out to me at admin@themoneysandwich.com or visit themoneysandwich.com if you have a question or would like to learn more. Enjoyed this episode and want to hear more of A Bite from the Money Sandwich? Make sure you subscribe on your platform of choice so you can automatically receive each episode as soon as it's released. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalized to your own situation, and past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is to provide tips, coaching, and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.